Folks, this is obviously addresses just the basics, American basics. Every 2 years, when folks who are honored by their neighborhoods, by their districts, to come represent them in this amazing place, we are sworn in by the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court to uphold the Constitution of the state of Colorado and the Constitution of the United States. And then every morning we come in here and we pledge allegiance to the same. It occurs to me that we ought to avoid proposing bills that pick away at the edges of those constitutional rights. This one in particular is addressed very strongly, not only in the United States Constitution, but also in the state of Colorado, even stronger. Right next to that, just before it, is the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, and talks to freedom of speech. Now, if we do a comparison between the Second Amendment that's being challenged by this bill and the freedom of speech bill, think of it in like terms, if you would, for a moment, of the ugly art, offensive words that people will say and put on display. Sometimes those are things we do not want exposed to ourselves and family. But that's the reason why we have those constitutional amendments that we swear to uphold, because they need to be protected from our feelings, our preferences as legislators. That's the case with this bill as well. It's a preference because there's a fear, especially of city dwellers who are not used to that other part of the state, which is the biggest part of the state, where open carry is just a way of life. It's American. And that's not a fear to say, oh my gosh, let's not have this anywhere. Now, that's something to get used to, because it's covered in those amendments to the United States Constitution, and even more so in the Colorado State Constitution that we swear to uphold. This is addressing how it makes us feel when we see that. How does it make me feel when I see art that I find offensive? Well, our response should not be, well, I'm going to make a law to prevent myself from being offended, or myself from being in fear from what I see someone else doing that is within their constitutionally protected rights for how they act. So this is just wrong on the most basic levels. There are, as has been addressed by Representative Catlin and others extensively here, there are other laws in place to appropriately address intimidation in the voting place, and that obviously not ought to exist, and we need to address that if we ever see it. And the examples given by the sponsors were like 80 years apart, the two examples given, and one wasn't even in Colorado. So this is not a prevalent issue that we need to create a whole new law that offends our constitutional rights for 5.5 million people. This is just a wrong way to go about addressing someone's concern, someone's discomfort. Instead, let's start thinking more like Americans. Let's start thinking more like Coloradans. And let's dismiss a bill like this with all due respect. This bill needs to go to history as one of those that we did not let pass on to the governor's office. Thank you, members.